we've now heard two topics discussed so far today. The first was focused on expansion and management of ESG data, and a great panel followed. The other, which we just heard from Amit, a talk about increasing focus on capturing real world business concepts and transforming them into enterprise-wide semantic data architectures geared towards reducing ambiguity and increasing transparency. Now, as all of these different areas continue to evolve, it's clear that organizations are turning towards cloud to host, manage, and make accessible this ever-increasing rich store of data that supports these business and social functions. But how can we be assured that the data collected is being properly curated and protected and governed? Our next panel, the best practice for data governance in the cloud, which I'm going to have the privilege to moderate, will take a shot at addressing some of these questions. So let me begin by introducing our panelists. Peggy Tsai, VP of Data Solution, is joining us from Big ID. Afshin Lofty, Executive Vice President, is joining us from Atacama. From Morgan Stanley, Richard Paris, Executive Director. And from Refinitiv, Ali Bage, Global Head of Business and Data Architecture. Welcome all to the panel.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
All right. So, Richard, I'm going to start with you. So in a recent Gartner report identifying the top 10 data and analytic trends in 2020, Gartner's comment regarding cloud was simply, cloud is a given. And as you know, and many of you have been part of this, the council has been facilitating this collaborative development project to build best practice framework called CDMC. And we've been blessed to be working with some of the biggest cloud providers in the world, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and IBM, along with over 60 companies for this adoption and migration to cloud. But before we talk about cloud adoption and cloud governance, why cloud at all? I mean, we've been operating on-prem for decades. What's the business case that makes cloud the platform of choice? And how is the current pandemic and the drive towards digitalization accelerating this attraction?
It's a good question to start with, John. Thanks. It's a big question. I'll try and answer each section as you asked it. So fundamentally, cloud has an outstanding potential. There are key features in there, such as elasticity, the always-on features, seamless global distribution, and they're incredibly attractive to our industry. Banks are a 24-hour data-intensive global operation. And CSPs have to solve most of the complex technology problems at scale for their substantial and varied customer base. They bring capabilities and a focus on those problems that are very hard to replicate on-prem within each company. Now, there's a lot of people, and previously a lot of the focus was on reducing spending on money and maintaining our own data centers and all of that infrastructure part. But really, that's not the main benefit from certainly Morgan Stanley's point of view. It's about increased speed, increased agility, the ability to develop our value-focused projects that serve our customers and our clients and our business units the best. The results, all this results in a dramatic increase in agility for the organization. And since the costs and time it takes to experiment are significantly lower, hopefully we can get value far quicker. But all of this is dependent on getting data controls, getting data governance, getting security principles correct and right and well used across platforms in a cohesive and easy to use manner. So we need these things in place in order to maximize the value. Otherwise, we're still building data controls in the cloud. And we can talk about, cost optimization, innovation, resiliency, security, the fact that so much of the cloud attracts the best talent in the industry who want to work on those technologies. And we can look at how there are advantages in these areas and how we can benefit. We can do a benefits realization. It ends up being a very big topic. We could talk about it all day. But like I said, everything is about value to our business, and cloud is a huge enabler for that. Now, with regards to digitalization, investment banking has been a digital business for a long time. If you look across our various business lines, we've always been serving our clients in digital means. It's heavily, right now, we're heavily focused on improving data and customer experience, as well as operational efficiency and resiliency, global resiliency. Those are like the next step in our digital journey as an industry, I would say. So what this means is that we have to have high quality shared across our services in order to improve those experiences and get that resiliency. And as the data moves to the cloud, again, we bring in data sovereignty, data privacy, data security, and all those data governance concerns. Now, you mentioned the pandemic. The pandemic is, of course, driving out cloud technologies. We're all on Zoom now, and Zoom is a huge cloud business. It's got bigger since the pandemic. Obviously, there's huge investments in collaboration technologies. There's investments in more remote working. How do we interact with our customers better? How do we drive those value relationships internally and with our customer base? Like I said, I could talk for a while, John, but I'll pause there to make sure that other people can chime in.
Rich, that's great. I guess it's fair to say that, you know, like a lot of these technologies, it's not nice to have anymore. If you're going to survive in this new world, you know, you mentioned the financial industry has been doing this for a while, but, you know, to some industries it might be new, and they're not going to have a lot of time to sit and wait, right? You have to drive into this new environment, and cloud is becoming the place to make that data available to all their customers. So I think you hit it on the head. Any other comments before I move on to a different topic? All right, well, let me jump into the next question. So I'm going to turn to the title of this panel, Data Governance in Cloud. So admittedly, data governance is not new. We've been doing data governance for a while. And although organizations still struggle sometimes to find the right balance and how much data governance to apply and how much gets adopted, et cetera, it's fair to say that, you know, data governance has been generally embraced by the industry. But now we're faced with this new wrinkle of cloud. And in fairness to the industry, the scope of data governance hasn't slowed down, nor has the amount of data that we have to manage and the different types of data. So now we're dealing with unstructured data, social media data, signal, satellite, and the list goes on. Ashton, where do we begin when it comes to applying governance in the cloud? How do we ensure that data in the cloud is of the highest value and it produces the highest quality of data? So how are you advising your clients as they migrate to ensure principles of data governance, data quality be recognized in the cloud?
Thank you, John. Those are great questions. First of all, I agree with you. Data governance is admittedly not a new concept. But however, as you expand your footprint to the cloud, some of the lesser challenges that you may have faced in the on-prem days are definitely now more amplified to the point where we believe a new approach is needed. You know, when you look at the rise of self-service analytics, you know, data democratization across the enterprise, you also now see a growing community of data consumers, you know, that are now motivated and encouraged to acquire, store, analyze, you know, data in order to generate business value from it. And now add to this your previous point about the, you know, ever increasing large amounts of new data, plus the fact that new systems and data sources are added with such ease in the cloud. You know, I agree with you. We now have a situation where you may start to lose track on where the data is located and which assets can or should not be accessed. And you know, if you eventually do find the data, it's very likely that there will be very or no insight on its characteristics and quality. So all of this really means that, you know, we will need to have a new comprehensive approach to you know, data classification, data cataloging with better access control, and as you mentioned, still continuing to maintain a mature data quality management and monitoring approach. And because of all of these reasons, you know, you will no longer be able to, you know, rely on the traditional crowdsourcing of data classification, data quality management like you did with on-prem. If you want to have a data governance initiative that is going to be successful on the cloud, you now must start to, most likely embrace the AI and machine learning and all the automation that will bring to this process, right? So this is because, as you guys all know, with cloud, everything is faster and more agile. So providing a solution where the users are the ones who will have to be in charge of updating all the metadata manually, it's just not going to work anymore, or at least not if you want a long-term sustainable data governance program on the cloud. You need to complement the traditional methodology of data governance. So obviously still focusing on data classification, data quality monitoring, but you need to kind of complement the traditional methodology with a more pattern-based approach so that you can scale, without the need to classify or manage, hundreds or even thousands of data attributes and data quality rules. And I think, Richard touched upon, some of the benefits of the cloud, which is the ability to scale, but which is fantastic, but you also need to be able to scale data governance program to match with that ever-growing, fast and agile cloud environment. And then I think, one other thing that I think would be very critical that we do recommend to all our clients is that to really try to take a look and leverage some of the well thought out frameworks that are out there, such as the EDM Council's cloud data governance framework, where you may be able to benefit from a set of proven best practices that have been collaboratively designed by industry practitioners who have done this before with great success, and obviously technology vendors such as Atacama and others on this panel as well.
Excellent. Ali Ashton pointed to the best practices of data management, which we should be already doing. Right?
That's correct.
But now we're saying in cloud. So is it a matter of new data management, or is it let's just get it right this time?
It's the chance to automate, I think, John. So what we've seen with mature data governance programs on-prem is that there is a lot of manual effort, as you were alluding to, Ashvin.
Yeah.
But when you move to cloud, there are a fairly standard set of data services that you're going to be using, and they can be self-describing. They're already instrumented to produce the usage data that you get charged by. So why not use that same information, that detail, in your data governance program? And that's really been the focus of our cloud data management capability working group that the EDM Council's helped to form this year, and has made really great progress in a collaborative forum across the industry, documenting those best practices, reusing DCAM where we feel it's appropriate, but also taking full advantage of the ability for some really amazing engineers in the cloud service providers to automate some of these manual processes for us.
Absolutely.
So that's been a great outcome so far.
So Peggy, let me turn to you. One of the biggest concerns we always hear, and it's one of the key things that's going on in that collaborative activity, is about data privacy, data protection in the cloud. Now, it wasn't long ago that if you mentioned moving sensitive data to cloud, you get the stiff arm. No one would want to touch it. But we see that trend changing. So what are you advising your clients when it comes to privacy and data protection in the cloud, and how should firms apply data governance to enhance this protection? And also, how is the regulatory community affecting how firms protect data?
Thanks, John. I mean, certainly the trend is changing, and we're seeing more industries either actively adopting cloud, or really have significant plans and projects in place for that. And as Richard said earlier, a lot of the movement towards cloud, it's really not possible without the strong foundation that's already in place with data governance and with security and controls. And what's tricky about, the reason why a lot of legal and compliance teams are concerned about moving data in cloud is, protecting your private, sensitive, confidential data. And what we're seeing and we're helping clients with is, being able to label and classify in real time any type, and be able to catch any potential sensitive data that may be going to the cloud that you want to be preventing. So certainly looking into leveraging the the AI and machine learning technologies that's available today to help with the cloud migration, right? Making sure that it's more than just pattern matching. It's actually understanding the actual data content itself that's moving into the cloud, and being able to classify and label that right away, and make any necessary triggers to warn if an actual private sensitive data has actually been transferred. So being able to do that real time is a real requirement that we've been seeing from many of our customers. And the second biggest thing about cloud migration and cloud projects is actually the concept of data minimization. And that's actually, one of the common things that's said in GDPR, and I think in a lot of the new privacy regulation protection laws, really thinking and being mindful about the data that's being transferred, and thinking about minimizing or reducing the amount of data that actually needs to be stored and actually is required for data processing. So, we look at organizations, looking at their vast amount of unstructured data, for example, that's huge, and being able to really cut down and reduce that amount, and to really be thoughtful about the actual data that they're storing. So I would say,
Yeah.
being able to classify, label, and also data minimization are key.
The minimization topic is fascinating, especially for someone like myself. I'm a pack rat. I still have my tax returns from 30 years ago. So I guess the idea is destroy that data. Don't keep it around, and it won't be discovered, right? If you, the less chance of breaches, or I should say the chance of a breach hitting sensitive data is minimizing the data that's there. So interesting concept. And certainly classification goes to, again, best practices in data management, but I like the idea of automating it, right? In the past, we have to manually classify things, and that's how things get missed. So really interesting perspective. Ali, let me direct the next question to you. So we have this move towards cloud. We can see the need for governance in the cloud, but how are organizations actually using the cloud? So when you think about the world we're in today, everything's driven by data. Data is the new oil, as they say. But I would say it can also be the new Achilles heel. Right? Used correctly, it drives sales and customer service. Used incorrectly, it creates situations where data can be inappropriately and unethically used. So how would you say firms are utilizing cloud to be a differentiator?
Yeah, well, John, we see a number of different drivers of cloud use in the industry, and Refinitiv's looking mainly at the financial services industry, but this is a very broad theme, and managing sensitive data is core to doing important things with cloud. So there is a general theme that organizations want to move up the stack. They want to reduce their infrastructure investments and spend more of their time building differentiating solutions on top of a technology stack that's being managed for them. So we see that refocusing of resources, and we see this with our customers too. They're asking for reference data to be delivered onto cloud platforms. We're asking to deploy our analytics tools onto cloud platforms. We're looking at workflow integrations with SaaS-based and PaaS-based cloud platforms that are being increasingly adopted. There's also the case that some services either are adopted first on cloud or are only available on cloud. So if you're looking at some of the very leading edge stuff, so for example, hardware accelerated machine learning, or quantum, if you're looking at dabbling in those areas, those are going to be made available as cloud services before they get to be in your data centers. So if you have the appropriate data controls, you'll be able to put your own sensitive commercial transaction information into those services and get extra insights ahead of the competition. Analytics in particular have been leading the way, as they have a, relatively speaking, lower data gravity than some of the other use cases. So we see better time to market for innovative new data science solutions, people adopting machine learning platforms and other kind of AI tools on data sets. And as we enable those better controls, we'll see more substantial workflow automation solutions. So people moving transaction processing systems like core settlements or financial reporting systems, large data warehouses with very, very heavy data gravity. As your source systems start to move, it'll make more and more sense for you to move your data warehouses and your lake type analytic functionality to the cloud platforms as well. So there's an important case here to say that cloud offers us the opportunity to take our collective industry experience from the last, I guess, nearly 20 years of learning how to deal with highly regulated, sensitive information, mostly financial services regulations in the past, but more recently privacy regulations. There are established best practices now that we can automate into the platform. So you can realistically expect all your data to be cataloged. It can all be classified from an information sensitivity point of view. You can expect to implement data governance workflows for anything that's classified as sensitive. You can enforce that entitlements are in place for that sensitive data and that it's encrypted correctly and it's retained for the right amount of time and it doesn't make its way into a jurisdiction where it's not supposed to be. We can also get much more accurate commercial usage information from our data and be able to see how much money am I spending putting this data into a cloud platform, how much money am I spending processing that data, and how many downstream consumers are taking a feed of it, all alongside the actual definition of that data using modern data catalogs.
So I hope somebody wrote that down, because that's the one of the best definitions I've heard of cloud. Clearly, cloud is not just storage. Right? There's a lot more to it, and I think you hit some of the great points that what cloud's going to enable going forward.
Yeah,
Hey,
you can hear that every week for 2 hours on a Thursday afternoon as part of the Cloud Data Management Working Group, where that's essentially all I say. So.
Fantastic. Panel, this has been great. We have a few minutes left. Mike, if you're there, I know you've been looking at the questions. Any questions for our panel before we break?
John, yes, there is a good question. It's a great question because often it's positioned as a barrier to accelerating cloud adoption. It's from Marcel. It's experts make the notion that the cloud is bringing more complexity to the security landscape than on-premise. What is the panel's view on this point of view?
My personal perception is that it changes your perception of risk. So the physical security on cloud is better than anybody's on-prem security. However, the misconfiguration risk is higher at the moment. And that's one of the areas of focus that we've got in partnership with the CDMC group is how can you say, look, I'm a GSIB and therefore I must have all of these data controls switched on at all times, in every environment for every user. And get that kind of reassurance. It's only once you've got those controls in place that you can have confidence that your security stance is correct. I don't know, Rich, you're chairing the sub-working group on security. What would you add to that?
There's definitely it's more challenging because it's a new environment and it's potentially more than one new environment if you take a multi-cloud strategy. So it becomes hard to create that common homogeneous control plane because all the technologies are very different. They're provided from different firms and different technologies in different regions, which gives you a complexity problem. So while you can implement the security, the challenge is in implementing it, as Ollie said, correctly with the right configurations in the right places on the right technologies. And then you have the flip side to that problem, which is we need to gather that evidence that everything is controlled, that the controls are operating correctly and in place. And because everything is heterogeneous, everything's different, it can become a challenge to actually collect that evidence, harvest it, and then present it in a common way so that we have confidence that the security is implemented across this heterogeneous environment.
Right, but at the same time, with on-prem, your security used to be more of a siloed approach that was only specific to your organization. Now, with the move towards the cloud, while of course, there's higher risk and there's much higher complexity and the repercussions are a lot larger. At the same time, you have a lot bigger support and a more shared vision of what that security needs to look like across the multiple organizations. So it's a bit of a pro and con situation there from my perspective.
So as you probably can tell, I know all the panelists and they're all my colleagues. So thank you folks for your insights. Really, really good conversation.